Based on the feedback that I got on last week's video on gut instinct, I want to return to the subject today. The first point I'd make is that I'm talking about gut instinct in the context of doing the right thing, in the context of the mid-level of focus, what I describe as operational focus. Your gut instinct will only inspire you if you have some idea what you want out of life, the strategic level of focus. So therefore, and that's why I'm doing the videos in this order, therefore strategic focus is a prerequisite to everything. I've been asked a couple of questions as a consequence of last week's video in relation to how will I know the difference between gut instinct and something that seems like a good idea at the time. And we all know what seemed like a good idea at the time very often turns out to be quite the opposite. I made the point in last week's video that very often it is very, very difficult to actually know what is gut instinct. Very often we mistake what is known as conventional wisdom for gut instinct. And very often, as I said in last week's video, you can only learn what is true gut instinct by trial and error. Now, wouldn't it be better again if you didn't have to go through the pain of the trial and error process? So what I want to talk about for a few minutes this morning is a means of actually developing your ability to listen to gut instinct, or to be inspired. Now, I know it may be mythical or legendary, but certainly the Buddha, having spent nearly 30 years wandering around trying really hard to discover the meaning of life, discovered it when he was sitting under a tree doing nothing. I know it may be mythical or legendary as well, but Sir Isaac Newton is reputed to have made his greatest scientific discovery in relation to gravity when he again was sitting under a tree doing nothing, when the penny dropped, or in his case, the apple. Perhaps there is a lesson in there for us normal, mere mortals. We need to spend a little time doing nothing. Now, people say to me, do you mean I should sit down and listen to music? Or sit down and watch the television? Or go for a walk? No, these are all activities, and indeed watching the television is very often an activity that numbs the mind rather than clears it. Very often listening to music is an activity that focuses the mind, but focuses it on the music and the feelings the music invokes, rather than on simply fully appreciating and paying attention to the here and now. So what I would suggest to you is that you actually allocate an afternoon. I mean, you take afternoons for meetings with people that you don't need to meet, don't you? You spend loads of time reading emails that you don't need to read, don't you? You waste afternoons on golf courses, feeling guilty that you're there, or thinking about something that has nothing to do with golf, and therefore you don't play your golf. You take holidays, don't you? You go to conferences that you don't need to go to. Surely you can allocate an afternoon to you. After all, you are the most important person in your world. Block out an afternoon and go to somewhere you've never been before. Find somewhere quiet where you can sit, where you won't be disturbed. Now that doesn't mean there shouldn't be anybody else around. You can do this in the middle of a coffee shop. You can do it, in fact, in the middle of an airport lounge. But you'd be best doing it in somewhere where there's lots to see, that's nice to sit, where you're not going to be cold or not going to be overwhelmed by undue extraneous noise. So find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit, and simply sit and watch the world go by. Now your mind will wander. Our minds are hardwired to wander. You will start thinking useless thoughts, and possibly one of the useless thoughts you will think is, what the hell am I doing here, sitting doing nothing for a couple of hours? That's a useless thought. Because sitting doing nothing is mental training. Sitting doing nothing clears the mind. And a clear mind becomes an inspired mind. Without a clear mind, you'll never be inspired. Without a clear mind, you will never be able to listen to your gut instinct. You may well think you're listening to gut instinct, and that may well be the rock that you perish upon. So find somewhere, no books, no reading, no newspapers, nothing to write with, nothing at all. And just sit there and see, feel, hear, smell and taste what's going on. Maybe in a mechanical way for the first few minutes until you get into this zone. But ultimately, I would suggest that you spend a little time, a couple of hours I'm talking about, simply sitting there, watching the world go by. Because when you do that, you tune your vital energy in with the underlying energy of the universe. I'm not talking about spiritual claptrap or nonsense here. I'm talking about the manner in which the universe operates, as proven by quantum physics. You tune yourself in to a higher level of awareness, a universal level of awareness. What I describe to some of my clients as the realm of wonderful ideas. I think you're worth it. I know I'm worth it. And if you have any regard for yourself, you will know that you're worth it too. 2 or 3 hours, that's all it takes. And you may be very surprised that as a result of that clarity of mind, that focus, you may be very surprised at what occurs to you. A few pennies may well drop.